I'm 75 years old. And here's the truth. I don't usually say out loud. Traveling the world saved my life, but it also revealed a regret I can never undo. I've been to 100 countries. I've stood under the northern lights in Iceland, eaten street food at midnight in Bangkok, gotten lost on purpose in the alleys of Rome. From the outside, people look at me and say, "You lived a dream." What they don't see is how late I started. For most of my life, I told myself the same things you might be telling yourself right now. I'll do it when I have more money. I'll do it when the kids are grown. I'll do it when work slows down. Years passed quietly while I waited for the right time. And the right time never arrived on its own. Here's the shocking part. Even after visiting 100 countries, even after all those stamps in my passport, there are nights I lie awake wondering how many sunsets I missed because I chose comfort over curiosity. There was one specific moment when I realized I had been living as if time were unlimited. That moment didn't happen on a plane or in some exotic place. It happened at home. And once it happened, I could never unsee the truth again. But before I tell you what that moment was, before I tell you what finally pushed me to change everything, you need to understand the life I was living before I ever bought my first international ticket. Because if you're listening right now, chances are you're standing exactly where I once stood. And I need to tell you this before it's too late for you too. I grew up believing life followed a straight line. You worked hard. You stayed responsible, and someday you rewarded yourself. I was born in 1949, the oldest of 3 siblings, in a modest neighborhood where ambition meant stability, not adventure. My father worked the same factory job for 37 years. He never complained. My mother stretched every dollar until it squeaked. Vacations were in flights or hotels. Vacations were a long weekend at my uncle's house, 2 towns over. So when I graduated college in 1971 and landed my first real job and entry-level position at an engineering firm making $19,200 a year, I felt like I had already won. At 22, my goal wasn't to see the world. It was to be dependable. By 27, I was married. By 31, we had our first child. By 35, the second. I bought a house with a 30-year mortgage, a lawn I mowed every Saturday morning, and a garage that slowly filled with things I thought proved I was doing life correctly. And every once in a while, travel would tap me on the shoulder. A coworker would come back from Europe with photos of cobblestone streets. A magazine would show a man my age standing in front of the pyramids. My wife would say, half joking, "Wouldn't it be nice to see Paris someday?" I always smiled. And then I said the words that quietly stole decades of my life. Someday. I told myself I was being responsible. Plane tickets felt extravagant. Time off felt risky. There was always a deadline, a bill, a school event, or a promotion just around the corner. And here's the dangerous part. Life rewarded me for that thinking. I did well at work. By 45, I was a senior manager overseeing a team of 20. By 50, I was making 6 figures. We upgraded the house. I drove a sensible sedan that lasted 12 years. On paper, I was successful. People looked at me and said, "You've built a good life." And they were right. But they were also wrong, because beneath all that structure, something subtle was happening. My world was shrinking, not expanding. Every year, my routines became tighter. My routes became familiar. The conversations repeated themselves. I knew the grocery store aisles by heart. I knew exactly how long my commute would take. Nothing surprised me anymore. At first, that felt comforting. Predictability feels like safety when you're young, but over time, it turns into a cage. I remember being 48 years old, standing in line at the bank, watching a younger couple ahead of me talking excitedly about backpacking through South America for 6 months. I felt something sharp in my chest. Not jealousy exactly, more like recognition. I thought I used to be curious like that. But instead of listening to that feeling, I dismissed it. Midlife nonsense, I told myself. You're lucky. Don't be ungrateful. So I doubled down. I worked longer hours. I told myself travel was for retirees. I said when the kids are done with college, then it became when we finish paying off the house, then when I retire. Notice the pattern. Every milestone I reached became a reason to delay the next dream. By the time I turned 60, I had been on exactly 3 international trips, and all of them were work-related. Airport, hotel, conference room. Repeat. I saw the world through tinted windows and tight schedules. Here's something no one tells you when you're busy being responsible. Time doesn't feel fast while it's passing. It feels fast after it's gone. I didn't wake up one day feeling old. I woke up one day realizing decades had slipped by quietly, politely, without asking permission. Then came the moment that changed everything. It wasn't dramatic. No accident. No tragedy. Just a simple, ordinary conversation that cracked my entire worldview open. But what happened next forced me to confront a truth I had avoided for over 40 years. And once you hear it, you may never look at someday the same way again. I was 62 years old when it happened. It was a Tuesday. Ordinary. Unremarkable. I remember that detail because nothing about that day felt important until it became the most important day of my later life. I was sitting at the small kitchen table, the same one we'd owned for 20 years, drinking coffee that had already gone cold. My wife was flipping through a stack of mail, and I was half listening to the morning news when she said, almost casually, "Did you hear about Mark?" Mark was a man I'd worked with for nearly 3 decades. Same department, same age. We'd shared countless lunches, retirement jokes, and complaints about management. "No," I said. "What about him?" She paused. "He passed away last night. Heart attack. 61. The words landed softly. Too softly. I nodded. Said the polite things people say. That's terrible. Too young. Then I reached for my mug, only to realize it was empty. Something about that empty cup stayed with me. Later that afternoon, I attended the office gathering held in Mark's honor. There were sandwiches no one ate. Coffee no one finished. Stories about how he was finally going to travel once he retired that fall. That phrase again. Finally going to travel. I stood there listening, smiling politely, while a cold realization crept up my spine. Mark and I had said the same things. We had made the same plans. We had made the postponed the same dreams. That night I pulled an old shoebox out of the closet. Inside were brochures I'd collected over the years. Italy, Japan, New Zealand. Some were over 30 years old. Edges yellowed. Destinations already checked off by younger versions of me in other universes. My wife sat beside me on the floor, quietly flipping through them. "Why didn't we go?" she asked, not accusing. Just curious. I opened my mouth and nothing came out. Because for the first time I heard my excuses for what they really were. Not responsibility, not prudence. Fear. Fear of spending money. Fear of inconvenience. Fear of stepping outside a life I had mastered. That night I barely slept. I kept seeing Mark's name on a white card surrounded by flowers. I kept thinking about the conversations we'd never have, the places he would never see. And then a terrifying thought hit me. If I die in the next 5 years, my life will look exactly the same as it does now. No new stories, no unfamiliar streets, no moments where I felt small in the best possible way. The next morning I did something completely out of character. I booked a plane ticket. No spreadsheets, no perfect plan, just a one-way ticket to Lisbon, Portugal, 90 days out. I didn't even tell my boss yet. My hand shook when I clicked confirm. I was afraid, Not of flying, but of finally living. That first trip was awkward. I packed too much. I got lost constantly. I mispronounced everything. But something happened to me on the second day, standing alone in the plaza as church bells echoed off ancient stone. I felt awake, not young, awake. Every sense turned up, colors brighter, conversations richer. Even my mistakes felt meaningful. And that's when I realized something painful. Travel doesn't just show you the world. It shows you the version of yourself you've been postponing. That trip turned into another, then another. Slowly at first, then obsessively. By 65, I'd visited 12 countries, by 70, over 50, by 75, 100. But with every new place, a quiet grief traveled with me. Grief for the man I could have been sooner. And that grief taught me a lesson I need you to hear, no matter how old you are right now. Because the real cost of waiting isn't money, it's identity. And in the next part, I want to tell you what the world taught me about time, about courage, and about why starting now matters more than starting perfectly. There's a lie we're all taught very early in life. It sounds responsible, mature, sensible. The lie is this: there will be time later. After traveling through 100 countries, after sitting on buses in Bolivia, trains in India, and boats in Vietnam, I can tell you something with absolute certainty. Later is not a place. It's a story we tell ourselves to avoid discomfort today. When I finally began traveling, I expected to learn about cultures, food, and history. And I did. But the deeper lessons had nothing to do with geography. The world taught me about time. In Morocco, I met a man named Hassan who ran a tiny leather shop in Fez. He was 43. He closed his shop every afternoon to drink tea with friends. When I asked him why, he smiled and said, "The work will wait, my life will not." That sentence hit me harder than any self-help book ever had. Because back home, I had spent decades doing the opposite. I had treated life like the thing that could wait. Here's the first lesson I learned far too late. Your life expands in proportion to the risks you take. Not reckless risks, human ones. Talking to strangers, being bad at something again, choosing curiosity over control. In Japan, I watched elderly men older than me taking beginner calligraphy classes. Their hands shook. They laughed at their mistakes. No one rushed them. No one judged them. It made me realize how deeply we fear looking foolish as adults. When you're young, mistakes are expected. When you're older, they feel humiliating. So we stop trying. Travel shattered that fear for me. Every country forced me to be a beginner again. And with that came humility, presence, joy. The second lesson was more painful. Comfort is addictive, and it slowly numbs your sense of wonder. At home, I had designed my life to remove friction, same routines, same meals, same conversations. That comfort felt like success. But in Croatia, I once missed a ferry and had to spend an unexpected night in a small coastal town. No plan, no hotel, just a bench, a sunset, and a conversation with a fisherman who spoke no English. That night is etched into my memory more clearly than entire years of my old life. Why? Because discomfort forces attention. When everything is predictable, days blur together. When something is unfamiliar, time stretches. That's why childhood feels long and adulthood feels fast. We stop collecting distinct memories. Here's something important, especially if you're in your 20s or 30s and listening to me thinking, this doesn't apply to me yet. It applies to you the most. I've met countless young travelers who assumed they had endless time. They rushed. They documented everything but felt very little. Time is not measured in years. It's measured in moments you remember. And waiting doesn't preserve those moments. It erases them. The third lesson the world taught me is one I wish I could tattoo on my younger self's hand. You don't need to travel far to live fully, but you do need to start now. Travel is a metaphor. It represents choosing experience over postponement. I've met people who never left their country but lived deeply because they said yes early and often. And I've met people who flew business class around the world yet never truly arrived anywhere. What matters is the decision to begin. Because once you begin, something incredible happens. You stop asking, is this practical? And start asking, will I regret not doing this? That question changes everything. In Peru, standing at 11,000 feet, breathless and humbled, I realized another truth. The world doesn't open up to you when you retire. It opens up to you when you show up. Every year you delay, your courage doesn't grow, it contracts. But the moment you act, no matter how small, the courage follows. That's why starting now matters. Not because tomorrow is guaranteed, but because today is the only day that belongs to you. And this brings me to the hardest part of this confession. The part I want you to sit with before you click away. Because there is a cost to waiting that no one puts in a spreadsheet. And if I don't say this plainly, I will have failed you. Here is the cost of waiting. It is not measured in money. It is measured in unused life. At 75, I don't regret the places I went. I regret the years I lived on autopilot, assuming time was something I could save for later, like spare change in a jar. You may be listening to this thinking, I can't afford to travel, or my responsibilities won't allow it, or now isn't the right season. I said all those things too. So let me speak to you directly, wherever you are in life. If you are in your 20s, do not wait to become established before you explore. Stability is not a finish line. It's a moving target. Use your flexibility while you have it. Sleep on couches. Take the cheap flight. Say yes before fear learns how to negotiate. If you are in your 30s or 40s, you are already telling yourself the time is speeding up. You are right. This is the decade where postponement becomes habit. If you don't interrupt it now, it will carry you quietly into regret. If you are in your 50s or 60s, do not believe the lie that it's too late. Your energy may be different, but your perspective is richer. Travel differently. Travel intentionally. But travel. And if you are older than me listening to this, first of all, thank you. Second, the best day to begin again is still today. Here is my actionable advice, not inspirational, practical. First, stop waiting for perfect conditions. They do not exist. Pick a date, even if it scares you. Second, start smaller than your fear. A neighboring city. A week off-grid. A solo afternoon somewhere unfamiliar. Momentum is built, not imagined. Third, spend money on experiences before things. I cannot remember the cost of a single trip. I remember every moment I felt alive. Fourth, tell people what you plan to do. Public intention creates accountability and courage. And now, the most important warning I can give you. One day, sooner than you think, you will do something for the last time. Your last spontaneous trip. Your last moment of physical ease. Your last chance to say, I'll go next year. The tragedy is not knowing when that last time is. That's why now matters. Travel taught me this, but you don't need a passport to learn it. You just need honesty. Ask yourself this tonight, in a quiet moment. If my life stays exactly the same for the next 10 years, will I be proud or will I be disappointed? I can't go back and start earlier. But you can. That's why I'm telling you this. Not to brag, not to romanticize travel, but to pass along the one truth I earned the hard way. The world is patient. Time is not. If this message resonated with you, do not let it fade into another saved video you mean to act on someday. Subscribe, like this video, and more importantly, choose one small action today that moves you toward the life you keep postponing, because one day you will be my age, and I want you to look back and say, I started when I still could. Thank you for listening.